So this fall, I found myself with a free weekend, which, you know, as a husband with 2 kids, doesn't happen all that often. So I did the completely natural thing of sleeping in my Prius and climbing 1.5 miles into the sky. So at about 5 a.m., woke up and started hiking with a backpack full of all the essentials like water, and cameras, and film, and fun-sized Milky Ways. After about 90 minutes of charging up the trail, I made it to Kolchak Lake, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's like the halfway point. And then from there, went around the lake and began the climb up Asgard Pass, which that's the really steep part to get up into the Enchantments, which is one of the more famous and definitely one of the most beautiful places in Washington State. Usually for these kind of sunrise hikes and stuff, it's pretty full. There's a lot of people hiking up until you get to Kolchak, and then it gets real quiet after that because nobody wants to do the big climbing. But we're in the middle of larch season. Now, it's completely reasonable if you don't know what a larch is, but a larch is a deciduous conifer. Conifers are trees with needles. Needles usually don't fall off, kind of why they're called evergreens. Larches, because they are so high, are one of the few types of deciduous conifers, meaning that those needles turn yellow and fall off. And it's super freaking pretty. I think they're really cool. I think they're super beautiful, so much so that I named my son Nico Larch after these trees. When I finally was getting to the top of Asgard Pass there, there's like enough light that I could start taking pictures. For this whole trip, I only brought my Mamiya 6 and I brought my phone. So I was trying to be as light as possible. But with that, I still had a couple more photo frames left from the video when I was comparing Portra 160 to Gold 200. So I had the last couple shots here of Gold 200 as I was climbing up. There's a couple of these photos of this larch, or this one of, I don't know, I just thought the mountain looked like a wolf trying to bite the moon. I don't know if the photo actually worked or not, but that was what was going through my mind. It was super fun too. Right when I was getting to the top, I ran into my buddy Ryan, who I haven't seen in years, because Washington's tiny and it's impossible to go hiking without seeing people you know. It was just super fun to be able to take a couple portraits of him and his running buddy when we were up there. But right as you get to the top of Asgard, there's this first lake, and I've taken this photo a few times before, and it just isn't, I don't know, I feel like I still just don't quite have it. Like, I don't know, I've taken it before on my phone, and maybe that's a little bit wider and that's a little bit more of what I was trying to do. It's something about like the 75mm lens on the Mamiya 6 just isn't quite wide enough. Like, I do wish that I had the 45 and had a little bit more of a width one, but that's what I got. So after I finished that roll of Gold 200, I put Cinestill 400D into the Mamiya 6. And this is the first time I'd ever shot that film. I kickstarted it like a lot of other people did back in the day, and then it just has kind of sat in my film fridge. Like, I don't know, I didn't want to just, hey, new film, and just shoot it. Like, I kind of wanted to wait and see. So I put this in, and it seemed like an interesting time to be able to see what it looked like in like a landscape perspective. From there, I kept moving around and taking pictures as like the little larch trees, especially in this upper part of the core of the Enchantments, are kind of like one of the only shrubs or trees or anything growing out, so they just like pop off of the scene in a really beautiful way. Also, like with the lower light of like early sun, by then it was like 9 a.m. or so, like the sun was still kind of on the horizon and stuff, so it just made them like glow with that beautiful backlight. I was super curious because I wanted to see what this film looked like being used in like a very like landscape photography perspective and stuff, just because, especially with the halation, people use the Cinestill film so often in places that are darker with lights that you get the halation, it really pops. But I was curious to see how much it shone through in such like a evenly bright scenario. The answer, it still shows through a lot. So if you like it, use it. And if you don't, I don't know. Yeah, do you. part of the reason I wanted to do this trip at this time was I've done this trip before, I've done this trip around Larches before, but I had never brought a good medium format camera up there. And so I kind of wanted to be able to go up there and take the film photos that I really wanted to, so I could kind of feel like I didn't need to go back up into this pass again anytime soon.
I've traveled far and wide, but never lost your eyes. I'll never say goodbye, 'cause your love just won't.
Once I finished that roll of 400D, I then switched over to Portra 400 just because I wanted to stick with that 400 film and just to be able to see the differences between the two.
Never wanted anybody but you. Never wanted anybody, never wanted anybody.
From there, I began to walk out towards one of my favorite viewpoints in the core region where you kind of have this view down towards a lake and then off to like this hillside beyond. And just, it's such a beautiful spot. As I kind of made my way over there though, as the compositions just kept being like almost there, and like I took a couple photos as I was climbing, but it just kind of kept like, it's just like, oh, I need to get a little bit higher, I need to get a little bit higher, I need to get a little bit higher. It kept going higher and higher and higher. And then as I was like kind of waiting for a photo to get, I ran in a couple of guys who were coming down and they're like joking around, they're having fun and stuff, and we're just kind of chatting about stuff. And I knew that they were coming off of a mountain called Little Annapurna, and something like I'd thought about going up before, but I'd just never been up there. And as they're like having fun and stuff, we're kind of chatting, I was like, so is it worth going up there? And just like the immediate like, yes, it is worth it, you definitely should go up there. Okay, cool, no jokes, ready to do it. It was kind of cool as I was climbing up there just because the viewpoint of these lower lakes just kind of expanded, and actually ended up taking this 3-photo panorama of the lower lakes and the larches and stuff, which 3 6x6 photos on here is definitely like not something I do very often just because that's a fairly expensive panorama, but it felt very worth it just because every time I'd try to frame up the view, it was beautiful, but it just kind of lacked like the full perspective that I thought of that it was required for an image like this.
Suppose that's where you are.
After about 15 minutes or so of climbing, I could feel the slope of the mountain starting to kind of level off, and there's a little bit of kind of these grasslands and a little bit of like trails and stuff, and you could see these big piles of rocks. I was like, oh, well, that's obviously the high thing. So I started walking over towards the pile of rocks. And right here, like watch this video and let's come back afterwards. Pauses right there, and I want to explain this moment because I'm usually not like, I'm not very afraid of height. I'm wary, but it's not a huge deal. I have never been so afraid of heights as that moment in my life. Picture this. You're climbing up some rocks and they look like they're really stable. And at the end of them, there is one rock that is approximately the size of like a tube you tow behind a boat. But if you were to fall off of this rock, rather than falling into the Puget Sound where you'd have to wait for 10 minutes while your dad pretended the boat wasn't working in order before he came and picked you up out of the water, you'd fall 4,000 feet to your death. Yeah, that's what it was. About 6 feet circle and 4,000 feet down the other side. So yeah, I climbed back down and I had to like go to the side and like look at it a few times. You're like, okay, that rock is very stable. Nothing's gonna happen on it. You can climb up there, you can sit down, you'll be okay. Then I climbed up there and like, I shot a couple of these videos and stuff, and then like this phone panorama, none of them come close to trying to give the depth and like beautiful terror that this gave me of just being alone on top of a mountain with a sheer cliff in front of me, but also being able to, you could see to like Oregon or something like it. From there, I'd finished off the roll of Portra 400 and switched over to Portra 160 just because it was super bright, and I definitely did not need that 400 speed by then. So I started working my way down the mountain and took some more photos along the way, and kind of continued all the way out as you went down to like this big clump where there's just like a lot of larches and stuff. I knew it would be a really pretty thing to photograph before I began my trek back out.
It's the fear I'll fail, it's never knowing who I am. It's where I'll go, it's what I'll see, it's what it takes to chase that.
Somewhere here, I finished the roll of Portra 160 and switched over to Gold 200 and would just kind of use that for the rest of the trip.
My desires out.
One thing that is nice, because this was like kind of mid-fall time, the sun moves really fast here in the Northwest, and so the sun had already kind of began its trajectory south. Like we were definitely into fall, and so this meant that kind of as long as you were looking southward, like basically all the larches were going to be like backlit all day long, which just made them like glow in a really nice way, which as a photographer is like a cheat code. It makes it really easy to photograph that.
It's who you are, it's what you need with all your heart out.
So after being at kind of like this low point where I filled up on water and ate some more fun-sized Snickers, I began my hike back up the mountain. And I was kind of going around this little bend and saw this view. And I have never just been so stoked to take a photo, because this was one of the most beautiful like little scenes I've ever seen. Just with like the deep teal shadows that were so naturally falling on the rocks there, mixed with the bright orange of the larches, just was a really, and then obviously like the deep, rich emerald water and stuff was just like perfectly coming together. Like, I have to take this photo.
Comes with time, I swear it comes with
From there, kind of just continued the upward trend, like working my way back towards the main core before I'd head on out, and like just kept shooting along the way, because it was just insanely beautiful.
Give me your best and your worst and keep me patient. Need to spend some time, just us, just the two. I am here right now, here to see this through. Yes, I am so. Give me your best and your worst and keep me patient. There are some things that we can't go changing. Bring you my love without any.
As I was getting up back to the kind of like the high point of Asgard Pass right before I walked out, I had to go out to like my favorite point, really in one of my favorite places in Washington State. Just because, like I said, I didn't expect to go back here again for a while, so I wanted to go over and just kind of revel in it for just a second. One of my favorite places in the world right here, like this spot right here. All this.
How do you see yourself
So magical.
as you live out your days? Did you get
Then, after that, I only had one photo left in my camera, so I packed in the pack and began this vlog down Asgard Pass, which took like an hour and a half. I did stop and take one last photo here at the light coming through, which I do really like this photo just because of the way that the light rays are coming around the mountain. It looks really nice. And then come around, and of course, like I get to the viewpoint of Kolchak and it's super beautiful. I'm like, I don't want to start a whole nother roll of film.
bring you my love without any hesitation?
Got back down, got to the car. It was a pretty solid day. I think I did about 8,000 feet of climbing and almost 20 miles of hiking, and it was completely worth it. Whenever you have a weekend wide open, go do cool stuff, because it's way more fun. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you around.
About it, how we had it, how we have it. reminisce in every moment. I wish it was frozen, I'm tired of time floating. You could keep me stuck in this day, caught in your gaze, lost in my haze, and unfreeze me a million from now and still be around.